Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Annie and Kate. And over to you, Annie, to introduce our guest tonight.
Thank you, Kate. So our wonderful and fabulous guest today is Dr. Devora Lieberman. She's a clinical director at City Fertility's Sydney CBD clinic, which opened in October last year in a very swanky pants office, might I add. She got her MD from the State Uni in New York Downstate, trained in obstetrics and gynecology at George Washington University. By the way, if you hear a dinging in the background, that's Fred having a dinner, just letting you know. She joined faculty at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Boston in '94 and completed her master's in public health at Harvard in '96. So basically, she went to all of the best schools, I think is what we're saying here. After leaving Harvard, which at the time she was a lecturer in obstetrics and gynecology, she moved to Australia in 1998 when her fiance told her, there is no surf in Boston Harbour, which is true. There is no surf in Boston Harbour, but I think he probably should have known that in the first place. And then on arriving in Sydney, Devora worked in private IVF and public menopause clinics. When, sort of looking through challenges and obtaining she had the challenge of gaining her Medicare provider number as an overseas trained doctor, which forced her out of the medical workforce for a few years, during which time she did something else equally impressive, which was being the Associate Medical Director of Women's Health at Organon. I might have said that wrong now, MSD. Thank you. Responsible for pro-fertility, menopause, and contraception. So much wonderful experience. Then in 2003, she joined Guinea, which was Sydney IVF at the time, and returned to clinical work in IVF and miscarriage management. President of Family Planning at New South Wales for 12 years, is a past president of Sexual Health and Family Planning Australia, and director of the Fertility Society of Australia for 8 years as well. And not to say that all of that isn't massively impressive, she's also co-authored a book called Empowered Fertility, a Practical 12-Step Guide, which she wrote with life coach Claire Hall. Welcome, Devora.
Thank you very much.
Now, first question, what are you drinking?
I am drinking gin and tonic, Tanqueray and tonic, to be precise.
Excellent. And why Tanqueray?
Well, I drink Tanqueray. Actually, I never drank gin and tonic until COVID, and then everybody started drinking quinine because they thought it was going to protect them. Okay. And my grandmother was a Tanqueray drinker. She always had Tanqueray martinis, straight up with a twist. And she lost her mother to the 1918 flu pandemic. So I feel like we've kind of come full circle now in 2020. So that's why I'm now drinking Tanqueray.
Got it. It's a good gin. I am on, what am I drinking? It's an Italian red, a Rosso Vero Primitivo. One of those. It is very good. I got it from one of the little wine shops around the corner from me here in Balmain, and it's on offer. And I think I might go back and buy some more. It's that good. How about you, Kate?
Does Fred like it?
Fred, no, not so much. She's usually more, she likes cider. I think it's maybe
I can understand that.
A bit of sugar and a bit of fizz.
Yeah, my dog Roy used to like beer.
Oh, there you go. All right, Carruthers, tell everybody what you're drinking.
I am drinking a can of Gordon's gin and tonic because I am in the office and I realized that we had this, so I went and bought it. I've got 2 cans of it because I might need it because it's been a hell of a day. And we've got no glasses, so I'm drinking it out of this nifty, funky coffee mug. Thanks, Barbara.
What can I say? You are the epitome of style and grace right there, Kate. Oh, funny. All right. Do you want to ask the first question, Kate?
I will. I'm so tempted to do the popular culture one, but I know you don't want to do that one. I want to know what do you do self-care, and what do you do for self-care apart from drinking Tanqueray and tonic?
Yeah, well, that's waiting for gin o'clock during time of COVID. Self-care is hard for me, but so important. I work in IVF, and more often than not, I'm giving bad news. And have some days where I'm giving a lot of bad news, and that gets very draining. It's hard not to bring it home. I have tried meditating. I have had people try to teach me, and I can't do it. I find my flow through knitting, and I listen to podcasts and books and knit, and find myself getting lost in the cables, and that's kind of how I take myself out of the mess of the day.
That's really interesting, because knitting is a kind of meditative process, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
When you do it properly.
And apparently there's some connections with knitting and mathematics, which clearly have eluded me. But
they actually say that knitting and mathematics and coding, they're all very related.
Yes, but those two other fields are mysteries to me.
Maybe we can get you there one day.
No.
So my question for you, Devora, what's the one thing that you will never do again?
Never do again. Eat the worm at the bottom of the bottle of tequila.
Yeah, no, you should never do that, people.
No, I don't have too many regrets about things that I've done. It seems to all work itself out eventually.
And when was the last time you actually did end up eating the worm at the bottom of the tequila bowl?
Oh God, I think I must have been at uni a very long time ago. And I actually do like tequila. It's my preferred drink of choice, actually.
Interesting. I know quite a few of my girlfriends love tequila too. I think my experience of tequila at university was so, the whole just slam it down and shove some salt and lime down your throat and hope for the best. But I know that if you get really good tequila, you're meant to sip it and savor it.
Yes. Well, like this, and with a lot of lime and a couple of slices of jalapeno. It's beautiful.
Oh, really? Okay. I've learned something new there. So I'm going to kick us off into the sort of the broader chat. So you and Kate have known each other for quite some time, right? You used to work together.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, Kate, wasn't it?
Yeah, more than 10 years ago, I think.
Well, I joined Twitter like 11 years ago, so it was at least.
Yeah,
10.
so it's more than 10 years ago.
So how did that happen? How did you two meet?
We were both working at Janaea, so that was an IVF clinic, and I met Devora there.
Still is.
And it still is an IVF clinic, but I talked her into going on Twitter, and she's still there.
I am still there.
She is indeed, because I met Devora through, Kate knows that I struggle with endometriosis and a few other side effects of having stupidly horrible periods. And she kind of, what's the best way of putting this? Kate shamed me into finally getting help. And that's how I got connected to you, Devora. And I remember I walked into your clinic and we sat down, and about 5, maybe 6 minutes into the consultation, you went, "Hang on, are you Annie Parker on Twitter?" I went, "Yeah." And there you go. So anybody who tells me that Twitter is a terrible place, I kind of agree with them, but it's still also a wonderful place too, where you can meet great people and sort of still have positive conversations. So that's how I kind of remember that whole episode.
I didn't mean to.
It's very funny.
Meeting
in real life.
You to get help.
No, the thing, but you know what it's like though, when you've got to go do something. So it's like I put off going to the dentist.
Me too.
By the way, everybody go to your dentist. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, totally. Do it. So Devora, what actually made you interested in fertility as a thing for your career?
Oh, well, I tell you, it was kind of accidental. I started out my career starting out at uni, actually wanting to go to medical school to become a gynecologist, because someday I wanted to be president of Planned Parenthood, which is the American version of family planning. There were a whole series of events that happened around when I was 17, 18 that made me very passionate about teen pregnancy and wanting to stomp it out and do what I could about that. So that's why medical school, the master's in public health, etc. And I was working just in general O&G or OBGYN as I was in Boston, and coming to Australia, trying to find a new career path, and basically, frankly, kind of stumbled in happily to fertility and IVF. And if you told me 24 years ago that I'd be living in Sydney working in fertility, I would have told you you're out of your mind. But it's become now a passion and my life's work, really. So I'm very grateful for that change and the ability to embrace that.
And there's so much interesting technology and technological advances and scientific advances in the field over the last few years. But you mentioned earlier that you're still often delivering bad news.
Yeah. We will always be bumping up against the inefficiencies of human reproduction and how absolutely horrific we are as a species at reproducing. I used to say when I was the chair of family planning that I make babies by day and prevent them by night, because we had our board meetings at night. But I heard a fascinating statistic once that human beings are 100,000 times less efficient at reproduction than sheep.
Wow.
So it is far easier to make a lamb than a human.
Why is that?
I just think human beings are very complex. Very complex. And actually I did an embryo transfer today, and we were looking at the embryo up on the monitor and just marveling at how this clump of cells knows how to make a baby with 10 fingers and 10 toes. Just extraordinary to me that it ever happens at all.
Oh, it is certainly, magic of that, there's no doubt. And I think the other part, so a friend of mine back home in the UK has just gone through IVF. In the UK, you get one go of IVF on the NHS, which, that sounds fair. And thankfully for her, it worked on the first go. But that's not always true, right? IVF is not something that you can predict whether or not it's going to work.
No, absolutely not. People surprise me all the time, both positively and negatively. People often ask me, what are the success rates? Well, how long is a piece of string? It depends on so many factors. We talk about age all the time, and age is certainly probably one of the greatest factors. But then there are male factors, there are anatomical factors, genetic factors, so many things that we can't control. And that's the hardest thing for people going through treatment. People have compared the trauma of fertility treatment to the trauma of going through cancer treatment. And I think that's very much true from what I can.
Listening to my friend talking about, all the different ways she had to test herself and then inject herself. And, it's not just we put in an egg or a fertilized egg and hope for the best. It's a huge process, isn't it?
Well, happily the physical process has gotten so much easier. Back in my days at Organon, those are my drug dealing days, Annie. We were introducing devices and treatment protocols that really simplified the process so much. Back when I was in training last century, women had to have deep intramuscular injections, and it was very painful and very prolonged. The treatment protocol has gotten a lot simpler, but I think the emotional side of things and the loss of control and the not knowing what the other side's going to look like, that hasn't changed. And that's one of the big reasons that I wanted Claire to write the book that we did, to try to help women and couples coach themselves through treatment.
Yeah, and I've shared a link in the blog post about this to the book. So,
thank you.
At the Australian outlet.
At Booktopia maybe. Well, I make 40 cents for every book that we sell, so I'm grateful for that. if you think you're going to make fame and fortune writing a book, don't.
You need to write like Harry Potter or something.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that. Unless you're J.K. Rowling.
No, let's not go down that path.
I know. As soon as I said it, I wanted to take it back.
Look, the books are still good. The books are still good. You can leave it at that.
Do you watch Woody Allen movies?
No, it's never been my bag anyway, actually.
Okay.
Just not my thing. But going back to your drug dealing days, because I think that's important to go back to. Tell us more about that.
Oh, it was an incredible time. I went to work with this company that was launching products, really innovative products in menopause. So Tibolone or Livial. We were launching Implanon, the contraceptive rod in the arm. So this is a brand new, innovative, long-acting reversible contraception. And we launched a couple of fertility drugs. One was a device to make things simpler to give the injections, but the other was a whole new way of running an IVF cycle that really simplified it. And it traveled around the country and the world talking to doctors and fertility specialists about trying to shift their paradigm in how they were treating patients. And everyone was like, oh, it's not broke. Why do we need to fix it? And getting people to shift was really quite challenging. And now this protocol that we thought was never going to take off is probably more than 80% of cycles happen with this protocol. That's much simpler and much more patient-friendly.
Patient-friendly stuff. One of the things I'm really shocked about is just how rubbish medical treatment is for women.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's interesting. There's a big push about men's health. I'm thinking health has always been men's health. What's that about?
And something you mentioned is near and dear to my heart now is menopause.
That's becoming very near and dear to my heart as well, people.
So like, I think there's this great feeling like we're just supposed to suffer through it.
Yeah. That it's natural. It's actually not natural to outlive your ovaries. The life expectancy at the turn of the last century for women was about 45. So evolutionarily, our ovaries haven't caught up to the fact that we are now living more than a third of our lives post-menopausal. And back when I first started at the menopause clinic at Royal North Shore, we had the feeling that estrogen should be in the drinking water, that estrogen was the fountain of youth, and it was this panacea. And then along came the Women's Health Initiative, which you guys may be too young to remember this, but back in about 2001, this study came out showing all the horrors of hormone replacement therapy and increased deaths and blah, blah, blah. But it turns out the WHI investigators really designed that study very poorly, and they had the wrong women enrolling in the study, and they were women who were much later into their menopause rather than women just starting out in menopause. And there have been analyses about the tens of thousands of excess deaths that happened in the US because women just abandoned immediately their hormone therapy. And there is still, despite more studies showing safety, efficacy, there's this great fear of hormone replacement therapy. And I think that's terrible that women will suffer the physical symptoms as well as the potential medical problems of osteoporosis, premature heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, all sorts of things that estrogen is fabulous for.
Yeah, I went and saw my doctor, and she was like, oh, it's a pity we could put you on estrogen, but you've got a uterus. I was like, no, I don't have a uterus. And she's like, hooray, we can put you on estrogen.
But even if you had a uterus, there are ways around that.
I know, but she was just like, yay, it's much easier without a uterus. Here, have estrogen.
We go back a couple of steps, right? So I'm heading into menopause, just starting out. I'm a newbie. What the hell is it? What is happening to my body right now, and why is it having such a visceral response in ways that are frankly painful? So mine are hot flashes that can just literally, it feels like my face is about to burn off. It's that hot. The rest of my body is completely fine. And oftentimes my face is really, really hot, but the rest of my body is almost kind of blue cold. It makes no sense to me. What is going on?
Believe it or not, and I always think if men got hot flushes, we would know why. Nobody really knows why flushes happen. Certainly has to do with the loss of estrogen and something going on in the hypothalamus, possibly for temperature regulation.
And there is some fascinating research that indicates that it's not experienced the same way across all cultures.
Or I'm not so sure about that. I think that's a furphy.
Oh,
like people say, oh, Japanese women don't experience hot flushes because they eat a lot of soy in their diet. That's actually not true. They just never had words to describe it.
So this comes down to women not being able to tell their stories.
Yeah. Quite possibly.
Or not being listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing I'm seeing. I saw a really interesting article last week around some women who've got sort of longer tail kind of difficulties post-COVID. Things like struggling to take deep breaths, or feeling like part of their skin is itchy, and lots and lots of other things. And the amount of doctors that are just ignoring them and just saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, it's all in your head. Or
right.
And I think, particularly for things like menopause, even things like endometriosis, PCOS, a lot of the other conditions that are associated with menstruation itself, there's a reason why male doctors have been shit at diagnosing them. It's because they don't actually suffer it themselves. And the amount of research and dollars that go into it in the background, it being men's health versus women, is just staggering.
I'm not sure that you necessarily have to experience something in order to have empathy and an appreciation for what someone's going through, but perhaps women tend to be more empathic than men. That was a very sexist thing to say, wasn't it?
Well, no, it wasn't at all.
But it is fascinating to me how women are not listened to. You go to a male doctor and say, like I did with, I have irritable bowel syndrome. It's been diagnosed by a male gastroenterologist who finally said to me, yes, you do have irritable bowel syndrome. It's a real thing. Here's how we're going to treat it. But it was the first time in my entire life that anybody had ever listened to those symptoms and said, that's a real thing. And I was really shocked.
What, that it was a real thing, or somebody listened to you?
Both. Because I'd been told it was imaginary for so long, and have somebody, a top specialist say, yes, it's a real thing, it is a thing, and we can treat it.
Yeah. Well, certainly for menopause, the average age of menopause is 51, but a significant percentage of women will go through menopause in their 40s, and a smaller percentage even in their 20s. Wow. So the really sad thing is when a 35-year-old is complaining to their GP about, complaining is the wrong word, telling their GP about their hot flushes, they just get ignored. Oh, you're too young to be in menopause. It can't be. But it actually very well could be.
So what would your advice be, Devora, to any woman out there that's listening to this going, I really want for my doctor to listen to me, and they haven't yet, whether it's something to do with, say, PCOS or endometriosis, or they want to get pregnant and they're struggling, or it's menopause. What would your advice be?
Well, I think my advice would be to try to be as informed as you can about whatever that particular condition is. And if you're going to go to Dr. Google, be very careful about the sources that you go to. For menopause advice, the Australasian Menopause Society, AMS, has an excellent website with loads of information, and also has lists of providers who are members of the society, so they should be up to date on the latest and greatest. For polycystic ovarian syndrome symptoms, to start with a GP, but then perhaps see an endocrinologist or a fertility specialist who's more au fait with what that is. Certainly with endometriosis, there are plenty of endometriosis experts in Australia. So Endometriosis Australia is a good resource. Most of these conditions will have some sort of support group associated with them that you can go to for good advice.
And I'll get those from Devora and we'll pop them in the show notes so that everybody can see them.
I do think it's important that we keep talking about this sort of stuff, though, because I shared this with Devora earlier. I think it was yesterday. We were just chatting because I needed some more drugs. Thank you, Devora. And I was just sharing that I'd been down the dog park earlier walking Fred, and somebody had mentioned to me, "Gosh, you look quite flushed." I went, "Yeah, I'm having a hot flash at the moment." And they went, "Aren't you a bit young for that?" I mean, who knows? Tell my body that. If you want to tell it to stop being floshy because I'm too young, that's great. And then anyway, we started chatting, and then literally between 4 or 5 women, we went from me being sort of perimenopausal or menopausal quite young. I'm 43. That's kind of young on average. And then I shared that I'd had endometriosis. I've had 2 endometriosis hysteroscopies, so 2 operations. And then literally we went around the group: PCOS, endometriosis, a sister that had died of endometrial cancer, 2 women who'd had terrible menopauses. And it was just fascinating how quickly we went from Annie's got a red face to everyone sharing their story. So I don't know, I think there's something to be said for us talking more openly about this sort of stuff, so we make it less opaque, less scary, less, I don't know, thinking that you're alone.
Absolutely. Did you know these women when you started talking to them, or was it?
I know they're dogs.
Okay.
No, we know each other vaguely, and we pass each
Right.
other in the street and we'd wave, but I wouldn't be usually sharing my medical history with them. No. But
Nobody's business.
Do you get that as well, though? If you're
Oh my God.
at dinner parties.
Yes. What do you do? And I get regaled with I get horrific labor stories, hysterectomy stories. Yeah. I feel like I should send bills at the end of the night after everything I go through.
Just say you work for the tax department. No one ever asks you any questions.
That's a good idea.
Conversation killer.
No, then they'd want to know, well, what do I do about my negative gearing or something?
Oh, no, I'm just a clerk in the tax department. I don't know. No.
But I do think that people need to share their stories more, because there's so much shame around it all, isn't there? I think even now, even with all of the stories about infertility that have been being told for decades, women will still feel shame often around. Oh, you're having it? Is that your second one now?
It's my second one. I've had a long day. It's been a hard day.
Okay. All right. I'm not counting. But to normalize these things, right? To normalize the pain and that it's not a shameful thing.
It's just life.
It is life. But the good news, Annie, about going into menopause now is it will cure your endometriosis.
Look, one door opens, another door closes.
But as I said to you, I've got drugs for that, so it's all good.
I will absolutely take all of the drugs. And Kate and I have a friend who, well, I've got quite a few friends actually that are going through or have been through menopause, and they chose the path of not wanting to take drugs. I am not that woman.
Yeah.
I
respect that choice, absolutely, but I think it needs to be an informed choice to understand the pros, cons, risk, benefits of whatever you do, and whatever you decide to do. That's fine by me, as long as you've had all the information. You can make your own informed choice.
Well, one of the things Annie and I have been talking about is potentially doing a panel where we get some people together. We'd really like to get you on it too, Devora, to have a discussion about menopause, because so many women are kind of struggling with this, and unless they happen to have a conversation in the dog park or something, they feel really alone. And we just feel like maybe it's time to start having some conversations.
Well, if we live long enough, we'll all go through it. Ovaries will not last forever. So yeah, I think it'd be great. And there are stacks of resources and some really great menopause clinics around Australia as well. The menopause clinic at North Shore I was there for 17 years and I loved it. It was amazing how you could change someone's life so dramatically with a tiny little patch or pill.
Fascinating.
Just bringing their quality of life back. Yeah, life changing. It's quite powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, I think not people are I reckon that study, that early 2000s study, has put so many women off the notion of doing HRT.
Yeah. That's like what the Dalcon Shield did for IUDs. You know, most women who are thinking, oh, I'm not going to get an IUD now, weren't even born when the Dalcon Shield disaster happened. But it just, this negative air hangs around it.
These things are always fascinating to me, how a weird thing in the timeline ends up completely screwing it for other people down the line. It's just interesting how easy that can happen, and oftentimes how it's a completely bogus piece of research that ends up, you know, sending things off down the wrong track.
Well, look at anti-vaxxers. You know, that Lancet article that has been completely discredited, but has left us with a whole host of people who think that vaccines cause autism.
And there's research papers or surveys, I think, from the US, where there's somewhere between 25 and 30% of American citizens who are saying that when a COVID vaccine becomes available, they will not take it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, how can you say that? You don't even know what it is yet. You don't.
I have seen people being concerned about FDA fast tracking a vaccine.
That's
because they're concerned that Trump needs this in order to get reelected, so they're worried about that. But I said to one of my friends on Facebook, well, you don't have to just trust FDA. You can go to the European Medicines Authority. You can even look at our own Therapeutic Goods Association if you're worried about political pressure on approval to see what international bodies are saying. But it's crazy, isn't it?
Well,
switching gears a little bit.
Yeah.
What are the things that you're most excited about in terms of innovation that's happening in the medical space?
I think that the era of breakthroughs in IVF is kind of over. I think our gains now are quite incremental. So you see these stories about what artificial intelligence is going to do in order to help select the best embryo. Well, that's great in helping you select the best embryo, but if all of your embryos are not great, it's not going to help you ultimately. Right. That's a big challenge. And I think that a lot of research gets overhyped. You know, when you have research comes out of university and the PR department does the press release, and they forget to mention that the subjects were mice, not people. It's problematic. But look, I think it's exciting but challenging times. But then thinking about COVID and going back to my great grandmother who died in 1918, we're back to wearing masks, which were.
And did she die from the flu? Did she die from the Spanish flu?
She died from, can we call it the
my
Spanish
grandfather's.
Flu? Isn't that racist?
My grandpa, well, it's kind of not. It's because it's called the Spanish flu because Spain was not fighting in World War I, and they had a free media and nobody else did. There was censorship in every other region, so it got dubbed the Spanish flu for that reason. Right. And that's why now they don't like to have countries' names on it. They give it a disease-specific name.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why. So Spain was probably the last place. The choices for the origination of the Spanish flu are America, Kansas, or France.
Wasn't there Hong Kong flu once?
Yeah, that was in the 60s. So, you know, so that they've kind of moved away from this whole notion of naming it after a geographic location. Otherwise,
Right.
this one would be Wuhan flu. And that's why we have coronavirus 2019.
Mm.
But it's coming back to your grandmother, because my grandfather's parents died in that orphaning him. You know, so
Wow.
it was a huge impact. And I've been researching, and they had all the same fights that we're having about lockdowns, about masks, and it's like we never learned anything. And after the Spanish flu, it was like there was this great forgetting. Nobody wanted to remember it, even though it killed more people than World War One.
Wow. And then the depression would have happened not long after that.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I was listening about to a podcast, and they were talking about how the effects of this COVID are just going to be with us for generations.
And
probably
it's
more
really
so in the US.
It's really interesting, because there's research in America that shows the impacts of this kind of thing on areas that are already in poverty, much more marked than in rich areas. And you can already see it in the employment maps in Manhattan, and you can, and the Bronx and Brooklyn. You can see there are certain parts that are doing well and other parts that are in deep recession.
Yeah, it's but look at the which workers are actually essential. It's the lowest paid.
That's one of the worst and most important, sorry, not worst, the most important things I think that's come out of COVID for me is just an appreciation for how much we rely on nurses and porters and cleaners and supermarket workers, you know, people who perhaps before COVID we would have dismissed as perhaps not being, you know, in the financial hierarchy of pay. Yeah, they're not well treated, and bloody hell they should be. And I don't know whether we've learned the lesson yet. That's my frustration.
Well, I was actually going to ask Devora, so obviously coming from America, and you're safely ensconced here in Sydney, mercifully, what are you looking at it, and how are you perceiving it? Oops. We'll wait for Devora to reconnect.
I think she's on her way back. That's the first time that's happened, Kate. We're doing quite well.
Yeah. Hello.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
You're not on the university dark fiber like me for this time. So it's a luxury for me. So I was asking, what you're obviously here safely in Sydney. You're looking back at America, being originally an American. How are you feeling? How are you perceiving what's going on over there?
Oh my God, I don't even know where to start. I have been obsessed with U.S. politics for the last 4 and a bit years. In a way, you know, when Obama was president, I never paid much attention because I just, you know, everything seemed to be going all right. But, geez, what an absolute disaster. It's quite frightening. And every election time, I think, oh, if this person gets in, I'm going to give up my U.S. citizenship, and then I never do. But just think, oh, if Trump manages to get in again, I just don't know what I'm going to do.
I think we might have to help you burn your US passport.
Yeah, I think we will do an intervention if that happens.
Well, I think I'm on track to now live more than half my life, I hope, if I live long enough in Australia. So I'm probably will end up being more Australian than American, despite my accent, which twangs a little bit. But the mess that he's made of COVID, and the grift in that whole administration, it just makes me so ill.
It's quite spectacular.
And, you know, with COVID and our little government, I feel there are a lot of benefits to being a small island nation at the bottom of the world where nobody really gives a toss.
I agree. Yep. There's times when it's good to be an island. Although Britain hasn't fared too well being an island.
No, it hasn't. And I think some of that is down to let's not forget there's a difference between being an island and, to Devora's point, in the middle of nowhere versus an island in the middle of, from the US as a jumping point into Europe. So there's that going for the UK in the sense of it's a tipping off point into lots of other parts of the world. Let's just be really brutally honest. Boris Johnson has chosen a strategy of perhaps favouring economy over people's lives, and that I think is going to be one of his biggest failures when people go back and score him on his prime ministership, which, let's face it, is just a bit of a joke in the first place as well. I mean, I've only ever met him once, and it was whilst he was Lord Mayor of London at the time, and we had a ping pong table, and it turns out that he used to play ping pong, but of course it's not called ping pong at Eton, it's called whiff waff. So he's calling it whiff waff and batting that, and just, you sat there going, this is just cringeworthy. This man is from a completely different population of people who have absolutely no understanding of what the real world is like. And that's his problem.
What I don't understand is that false dichotomy, I think it's false, between virus and economy. Because if you don't control the virus, there is no economy.
But isn't the economy just people at the end of the day?
Yes, it is.
Unless we count corporations as people.
Oh, that's Citizens United.
I know. But, I think, like, if you don't have people, you don't have an economy. It seems...
Yeah.
So it does seem like a false dichotomy to me to think of people as separate to the economy.
And I think that, going back to something Devora said a couple of minutes ago around, we don't actually know what the downstream impacts of COVID really are yet. So for us to say, or for any politician to say, you know what, it's okay to have a certain percentage of deaths because as long as the economy still keeps going, then we're okay. They don't know that. They have no idea. They don't know what the, sort of secondary or third kind of level health impacts are of people who've had COVID. I saw an article yesterday of a woman who's now had a lung transplant because her lungs got completely destroyed by COVID. And yet, okay, so it's not just the flu, people. It's not just a virus. This destroys organs, and even if you survive and recover from it, there are potentially other impacts on your body that we don't know yet.
Well, like you were talking about the women who are complaining of weird post-COVID symptoms that are real.
Well, men too. So there's the long haulers, they're calling themselves, and they've got a plethora of fascinating and somewhat horrifying symptoms. So I think the tip is try not to catch COVID.
Wear a mask, wash your hands.
Yes. Well, I wore a mask in the food court in my building today, and I was the only one. There were lots of people out and about.
Wow. Yeah, I refuse to set foot in a supermarket without wearing a mask now.
Yep. And I was talking to someone today who was saying that everybody at a god-awful hour this morning at Woolies had their mask on. So there are some people. Anyway, I think this is a pretty good time to call it to a close. Thank you so much, Devora. It's been really great.
Oh, lovely to see both of you and have a chat. Look forward to that menopause panel.
Yeah, let's do that. And one day in the after times we can catch up in real life for a real life drink. We will.
Well, that would be amazing. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please remember to like us and leave us a good review because that would be nice. And we'll be back shortly. Thanks. Bye.